You're nothing. Stop acting like you're important, my mother said flatly. Honestly, half the time we forget you even exist, my brother chimed in. So I tapped my fork lightly against my glass and said, won't take long. Just 3 sentences. By the time I got to the second, my mother's complexion had drained of color. I didn't flinch, didn't tear up, didn't so much as blink. When you grow up with people like mine, you learn to hold your face like a shield. You learn to stay unreadable, especially in ways they can't twist against you later. And that's how brunch began. They call it brunch, but truthfully it's just Sunday lunch dressed up with mimosas and extra judgment. The menu rotates, but the mood never shifts. We were halfway through a jaw-drying slice of quiche when my mom decided it was time for her routine life performance review. She runs these family meals like annual evaluations. Only I never even got the job she's grading me on. You're a nobody, she repeated, casual as if discussing the weather. Then Ryan, my little brother whose most notable achievement is existing in range of a Wi-Fi signal, smirked and said, honestly, we forget you're around most of the time. He laughed like it was a shared joke. I didn't. Instead, I reached for my glass. No drama, just a soft metallic clink with my fork, and said, this'll be quick. 3 sentences. They both froze mid-bite. Perfect, I said, glancing at Dad's chair. This copy's for you. Then I slid a plain black folder from my bag across the white tablecloth. No raised voice, no speech, just a smooth push toward them. Ryan squinted, like I'd just handed him a resume. Mark, the man my mom married when I was 15, who stopped calling my dad Dad the second the ink dried, leaned forward like he was expecting concert tickets. My mom didn't move. She just stared at it. Finally, she opened it. First page, then third, and I watched the change in her face. That slow-motion realization, like hitting the brakes only to find they don't work, and the walls rushing closer. Her fingers trembled slightly. Mark's smugness drained away. Ryan's fork froze in the air, unsure if he should keep eating or bolt. When she reached the last page, she muttered, you little bitch. Mark shot up, chair scraping the tile. You said you deleted that. I stood, straightened my sweater, picked up my bag. The originals are already with people who matter, I said. This is just for you to enjoy personally. Then I walked out. Let's back up a bit. Technically, I'd moved back in with them 3 months before this charming brunch. Told them I couldn't cover rent on my apartment anymore. Claimed I was struggling and needed a hand. Mom agreed, but reluctant doesn't begin to cover it. She made it crystal clear, rent, chores, and zero attitude. Ryan lives there too. No job, no rent, no chores. His only contributions are dirty dishes and opinions no one asked for. I got the laundry room, not the guest room, not my old room. There's still a dryer in there that rattles at night like it's haunted. Every time it shook the wall, I'd remind myself, just a little longer, until I had what I needed. Because I wasn't there to reconnect. I wasn't there because I had no other options. I was there because I knew there were things they'd never imagine I'd uncover. And I intended to find them. None of that showed at brunch. At brunch, I poured orange juice past the butter, and smiled politely when Mark cracked his awkward, fake jokes about millennials not knowing how to do laundry. Pretty ironic, considering I was the one actually doing his. I said thanks when my mom handed me a napkin like she'd just done me a huge favor. Nobody asked how my job was going. Nobody asked what I'd been working on. The closest I got to actual interest was, still driving that little car? For Christmas, I got a mug that said somebody's favorite daughter, which is hilarious since I'm pretty sure they only wrapped it that morning. Ryan. He got a brand new smartwatch and a Cancun getaway for his mental health. Me? I got to vacuum the stairs. So no, the moment at brunch wasn't premeditated, but it felt like it had been waiting for its cue. When I saw her face drain of color, when Mark's eyes darted toward the door like he was calculating his escape time, when Ryan finally shut his mouth for once, I knew I'd struck the nerve. I didn't need to shout. I just had to speak the truth. And I wasn't anywhere close to finished. You know how some people talk about their childhood like it was a quirky sitcom? Inside jokes, odd family rituals, funny birthday party mishaps everyone laughs about now. Mine wasn't like that. My childhood was less Full House and more Survivor, minus the prize money. On the outside, we passed as normal. Staged holiday photos, family vacations that somehow made it into scrapbooks, a fridge plastered with Ryan's awful school doodles like he was destined to be the next Picasso. Inside, it felt like living through a group project where I did all the work and still got blamed for the failing grade. Ryan was always the star, the golden child who could wreck something and be called spirited. Once, I accidentally knocked over a cup of juice and got sent to my room for being careless and dramatic. There were times I truly wondered if they'd forgotten I even existed. When I was 9, I came home thrilled because I'd won a small art contest at school. It wasn't huge, but I was proud. I showed my mom the certificate. She glanced at it and said, "You really should focus more on science. Art won't take you anywhere." That same week, Ryan brought home a participation ribbon for Best Listener. She framed it. Things like that pile up. They wear you down in ways nobody can see. You start thinking maybe it really is you. Maybe you are less interesting, less likable, less worth noticing. The only person who didn't treat me like an afterthought was my dad. He wasn't flashy or dramatic, never chasing Parent of the Year. But he showed up. He helped with homework, made the world's best grilled cheese, let me ramble about books and actually remembered what I said. He was steady quiet. I never understood why my mom seemed irritated with him. Like him simply existing was an offense. But she treated him exactly how she treated me, which in hindsight says everything. I never questioned it. Not until the day everything split open. I was 12, sitting in the living room eating plain popcorn, half watching a show I didn't care about. Ryan was upstairs. Mom was scrolling on her phone. She suddenly turned off the TV and said she needed to show me something serious. Bad sign. She scrolled through her messages, then held out her phone. "This is from your father. You need to see what kind of man he really is." The text was short, just one line. "If you take her, I'll kill you both." I stared at it, not fully registering, like my brain had just skipped a beat. She told me he was dangerous, that she'd always suspected something was wrong with him, that she was filing for full custody to keep me safe. She rubbed my back like she was the hero in all this, told me I didn't have to be scared anymore. I didn't even cry at first. I just sat there, stunned, like the ground had vanished under me and I was still falling. Then came the court orders, the silence, and the new rules. No phone calls, no visits, no "we'll work it out." Just over. My dad vanished overnight, like someone had cut him from the script, and I was expected to be thankful. My mom called what followed the rebuilding years, which is funny, because she never rebuilt a thing. She just reprogrammed the control panel. I became her emotional outlet, her live-in helper, the child she hadn't wanted but still had to deal with. Ryan grew louder, lazier, meaner. I faded into the background. She quit pretending we were a family. I was there solely because she didn't want the optics of sending her daughter to live with someone she painted as unstable. The affection, the warmth, the basic humanity, gone. For a long time I didn't think about my dad. Not really. I shoved him into a mental box marked dangerous and closed the lid. But some things don't stay buried. Especially when they never made sense in the first place. Too many details didn't add up. Too many times I'd hear someone talk about their dad and feel this odd ache, like I was mourning a death no one admitted happened. And the story I'd been told never quite fit. My dad wasn't that man. He was the one who teared up watching Finding Nemo. The one who apologized if his tone got even slightly sharp. The one who said, "I love you," every single time we spoke. But I kept my mouth shut, because once you start questioning one lie, you have to question them all. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. Fast forward to my 20s. The ache got sharper. The questions grew heavier. One day, I picked up my phone and sent a message to a number I wasn't sure even worked. "Hi, I don't know if this is still your number, but I wanted to say hello. Leah." 15 minutes later he replied, and that's when the unraveling began. I didn't go back. Not after brunch. Not after the folder hit the table, and my mom's expression crumpled. But her pride wouldn't let it fully break. I walked out without looking back. Didn't take leftovers. Didn't even grab my coat. It wasn't that cold. And honestly, the dramatic exit mattered more than sleeves. I checked into a short-term rental under a fake last name. Nothing wild. Just enough to keep things quiet until the fallout settled. 2 hours later, my brother texted, "What the hell did you just do?" Then Mom's having a meltdown. Mark's yelling. They won't tell me what's going on. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I really did want them to stew in it. Let them sweat through their polo shirts, wondering how the whole web of lies suddenly went up in flames. I wish I could say it was a master plan from the start. Truth is, it began as a hunch on a really bad night when I was 23. I couldn't sleep, kept thinking about that message Mom had shown me when I was 12. "If you take her, I'll kill you both." The line that made me cut my dad out like he was a tumor. The line that made me afraid of my own memories. But as I got older, it stopped making sense. My dad was the guy who made animal-shaped pancakes, who said safety first, without irony. He wasn't the type to send death threats. So one night I texted, "Hi, I don't know if this is still your number, but I wanted to say hello." 15 minutes later he wrote back, "Leah, I've been waiting 10 years for this." 3 days later, we met at a park, neutral ground. I half expected him to look different, harder, like maybe the man I remembered was just a child's wishful version. But he looked the same, just grayer, smaller. We made it to the second cup of coffee before I asked about the message. He didn't flinch, just shook his head and said, "I didn't write it. I didn't send it. I never would." No begging, no tears, just an apology. And I believed him. Not because he had proof, but because the second he said it, my gut went quiet. That's when I started digging. At first, I didn't know what I was after. I wasn't a hacker or some conspiracy chaser. Just a daughter desperate to know the truth. So I did something about it. I trained, got certified, became a licensed private investigator. The real kind. Legal paper-heavy, specializing in digital forensics, record searches, metadata analysis, and bank tracking. Once I had the tools, I moved back home. Told Mom I'd lost my job, couldn't afford rent, and needed a hand getting back on my feet. She rolled her eyes, offered me the laundry room, and made sure I earned my keep. And while I was there, I started looking. Eventually I found it. It began with an old laptop buried behind a stack of sweaters. Password protected, but nothing I couldn't crack. Inside the folders were a mess, labels like Legal 1, Assets Backup, and unbelievably, Do Not Open. Naturally, I opened it. There it was, a draft of the message, the fake one. "If you take her, I'll kill you both." Saved in a Word doc 5 days before the date she swore it was sent. Margins littered with notes, edits, even a comment bubble reading, "Too dramatic." But that wasn't the most damning thing. I uncovered emails between her and Mark, back when they were still just friends, plotting how to make my dad look unstable and secure the money. And about that money, she claimed Dad made a disastrous investment during the divorce, that half their assets simply vanished. But in another folder, because of course she backed it all up, I found scanned bank records, wire transfers to a BICE account, shell companies under Mark's name. They'd stolen it all. The house, the business, the custody agreement, leaving my dad with nothing but a wrecked reputation. I printed everything, made copies, handed one to Dad. The set I slid across the table at brunch? Just a souvenir. 3 nights after I walked out, there was a knock. Through the peephole, Dad. No hello, just a tired smile and, "I got the call. It's happening." The lawyer had filed, reopened the case, and started the process to reclaim the money, the house, and clear his record. It was already in motion. We sat on the couch, tea in hand, like it was just another evening. When he asked how I'd found it, I told him, enough to understand, not the whole story. When I finished, he said, "You didn't have to do this." "I didn't do it for you," I answered. "I did it for me." Then the text came. "Ryan, what's going on? You're really blowing up the family over old stuff? You made her cry." Then from Mom, "You're not done. Don't think you're done." Charming. I ignored them. I knew what was coming. 2 days later, the legal letter hit their mailbox. Certified, thick envelope, the kind that makes people go quiet. I wasn't there, but I heard about the scream. She'd opened it in the kitchen, read the first page, and dropped her wine glass. Read midday. Mark tried to stay composed, which must have been tough considering his name was on page 2. I can only imagine how fast he Googled. What happens when offshore accounts are traced? Ryan kept texting like this was just a misunderstanding. We can fix it. Fix what? The forged message. The stolen money? 20 years of treating me like a spare part? That ship burned a long time ago. The evidence was airtight: emails, drafts, bank records. My file wasn't just proof, it was an audit. The judge moved fast. Not out of revenge, just clarity. Called it a pattern of deception that damaged custody, finances, and safety. Translation: they lied on paper for years. The ruling: full restitution. Every cent repaid, with penalties and interest. They sold the house within 3 weeks at a loss. Mom downsized to a 2-bedroom condo with a leaky faucet and no insulation. No housewarming this time. But she wasn't done. About a week later, she made one last pathetic play, created a Facebook account in my name, same photo, same bio, even reposted my old updates. Then she posted rants saying Dad abused her, that I was unstable, and that we'd hacked her. 15 minutes later, the digital forensics guy traced it back to her home. Same Wi-Fi, same browser, same laptop she used for her Pilates streams. The judge didn't yell. He just stared at her like a math equation that didn't add up. Miss Hartwell, he said. You forged a message, stole from your ex-husband, and now you're impersonating your daughter online. She tried tears. They didn't land. Even Mark wouldn't meet her eye. Ryan disappeared the moment the money dried up. No goodbye, no sorry, just an unfollow on Instagram and, I assume, a frantic search for work that didn't require a resume. Dad bought a modest house. Not flashy, but with a yard and a porch that caught afternoon light. Called it peaceful, which I think meant free from my mother's voice in the walls. The day he got the keys, he handed me coffee and said, "No big speech, just thanks." That was enough. We sat in easy silence. The kind where your body remembers it doesn't have to brace anymore. When he asked what I'd do next, I said, "Live." Like I wasn't starting from rubble. He nodded. Good plan. A week later, Mom emailed me. Yes, emailed, subject line. You'll understand one day. The contents? Predictable. I did what I had to. You betrayed the family. You've always been ungrateful. Signed, Love, Mom. I archived it under unsolicited fiction. No big announcements, no viral posts, no essay on healing. I didn't want revenge. I wanted quiet. And I got it. No more explaining myself. No more proving why I felt like a guest in my own family. Just stillness. A kitchen with food. A living room that's mine. A dad who tells bad jokes without weaponizing them. They used to say I was a nobody, said it to my face and behind my back. But the thing about nobodies? We watch. We remember. We learn how the machinery works, especially the broken parts. And when we speak, we don't shout, we show receipts. They swore I didn't matter. Turns out I was the only one keeping score. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far. If I could have been quieter. If I should have just moved on. But then I remember how long I stayed silent, how much I ignored, how sure they were that I always would. So no, I don't regret it. But I still wonder. What do you think? Would you have walked away? Or handed over the folder? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe.